Hey guys, going to be doing an album review for you today. This time, the 2014 release by Opeth, Pale Communion. Now, I heard about this album coming out right at the beginning of 2014, obviously before we had any details of the record. But it was definitely one of my most anticipated albums of the year. I had very high expectations for it. I know a lot of people weren't too keen on the last album, Heritage, but I thought that was a really solid record. If you've not heard anything by Opeth in the past, please go to your local record shop, if you still have one that is, or go on Amazon or whatever you have to do and buy Blackwater Park, because to me that is one of the best albums in the history of metal. It's probably my top 10 albums ever. It's an utterly genius record. It's progressive, it's extreme when it needs to be, but it can be quite delicate at the same time. Truly a stunning record, and one that I'm sure many of you will already heard because of the critical acclaim surrounding it. Not just from me, because I haven't really talked about it too much, but from pretty much everyone in the metal community. But if you haven't heard anything by Opeth, please go and do that. But that's not the only thing they've done that's worthwhile. I think every Opeth album has at least some strong qualities, if not many of them. Their debut album, Orchid, came out in 1995, I believe. I could be off the mark there. But that is definitely a strong debut. It's probably my least favourite Opeth album, or it's not very high up there for me personally, but I do think it's a strong album in its own right, and well worth checking out if you're already an Opeth fan. I wouldn't say that would help you get into the band. It's kind of got a progressive black metal feel to it, and while I do think it's still a strong record, it's not one I return to too often. They then released Morning Rise, which is my favourite album of the Candlelight era. I know this is given the reputation as Opeth's weird album, very understandable, because it has got a jazz kit as the drummer. That's what the drummer plays, and the guitars are heavily distorted. It is a very odd album, but well worth your time if you do eventually check it out. My Arms Your Hearse is a brilliant record. I'm not going to talk about their discography too much because they have got quite a vast one. Still Life, regarded as many as the band's best. Not necessarily my favourite, definitely in my top 5. Still a very, very strong record in its own right. This is kind of when Opeth started going into more acoustic territory, or kind of focused on that more. They'd kind of explored that in past records. But I think this is an absolutely stunning record, and one I urge you to check out if you're getting into Opeth. In fact, I think that could be a bit of a gateway album for Opeth if you've not heard them already. Then we got Blackwater Park. No other metal record in the past 15 years, I think, stands up against Blackwater Park. I mean, there are albums that have come out since that some would argue aren't metal, that maybe I prefer, like Deftones' White Pony. Not sure if that's a metal record, or Tools Lateralis. Some people don't think that's a metal record, but for proper extreme metal, there isn't an album quite like Blackwater Park, in my humble opinion. And it's truly a stunning record, and one you have to go and buy if you're already into metal. Obviously this might not appeal to people who aren't into metal, but it's a brilliant album nonetheless. Then they did a double album thing. They released 2 albums at separate times. They had Deliverance, which was more brutal, and they had Damnation, which was far more proggy. There are like theremin moments on there. I prefer Damnation out of the 2, but both have some strong qualities to them. Then I believe it was Ghost Reveries, probably my second favourite Opeth album. It almost has a Comus influence to it. It's, again, a very strange album for Opeth, but one I, again, urge you to check out if you haven't heard it already. Then they had Watershed, which was the first Opeth album I ever bought. Probably one of my least favourite albums by them looking back, but entirely clean vocals as well. I believe Damnation was their first album to have entirely clean vocals, but still a stunning record. Well, not stunning, but still a very good record in its own right, and one you should definitely listen to if you're getting into Opeth, that is. Again, that could also be a gateway album for that band. Then in 2011 they released Heritage, which for a lot of people rubbed them up the wrong way. It was pure progressive rock. It was King Crimson, it was Yes, it was Comus, it was all of that rolled up into a ball. I loved it. The artwork is probably one of the best album arts I've ever seen in my life, you know, with so much imagery there. There's one of the members of the band kind of falling out of the tree, and that was a member who had left at the time, which I thought was quite clever of the band to do. It was a bit of a snarky comment towards him, it looks like, but I thought it was quite good. The artwork on Pale Communion, however, I think is probably the worst album art Opeth have ever done, and considering they've put out some of my favourite album covers ever, you know, with Morning Rise, or My Arms Your Hearse, or Blackwater Park, or Still Life, or Heritage, seeing this clearly photoshopped image is not really what I want from them. It felt a bit Microsoft Word, as I've said in a couple of my reviews. But the artwork isn't too important for me. Don't judge a book by its cover. I enjoy the concept of it, I just don't think it was conceived too well. But we're here to talk about the music and the music alone. Going into this album, I had very mixed expectations. The only thing I'd heard is Cusps of Eternity, which I was a bit lukewarm about. I still very much enjoyed it, but not as much as I was hoping from Opeth. You know, I didn't find it as engaging or interesting as some of the other stuff they've done, but I still got a lot of enjoyment out of it. I listened to it quite a few times, and I guess if you enjoy it, that's really all that matters. The second track they released, which is the first track on the record, Eternal Rains Will Come, completely neutralised any of my doubts. I completely was full on board with this album. It had a real King Crimson vibe to it. It was very almost ambient at points. It had very interesting guitar lines, and I think the production on this album lends itself best to a track like that or Moon Above, Sun Below. The production, by the way, is done by Steven Wilson, who also produced Blackwater Park, I believe, among other Opeth records, but again, I could easily be wrong there. I don't find his production really lends itself too well to this album as a whole. On some tracks it works very well, but it's very anticlimactic, which some people probably disagree with me for, but there are moments on this album, and I'm not dissing Steven Wilson as a musician. The Raven That Refused to Sing was one of my favourite albums of last year, but I don't know, his production on this album doesn't feel as good as it could have been. Considering he produced Blackwater Park, which has some of the best metal production in the history of the genre, for me personally, it's a bit of a letdown when you hear him produce such an anticlimactic production on an album that I felt really would have benefited from that. Songwriting, however, I think is definitely very, very strong. Opeth have never really let me down in the songwriting department. Some songs are definitely better than others. Moon Above, Sun Below is one of the best Opeth tracks since Ghost Reveries. I definitely prefer it to anything on Watershed and a lot of the stuff on Heritage, which are both records I still very much enjoy. Eternal Rains Will Come is a very odd track and again really suits the record. Or Goblin, I believe that's what it's called, is an interesting track as well. Again, about the anticlimactic thing, there are certain moments on this record which I feel would really benefit from a swell in the production, or the crash cymbal, I feel, which is sometimes used as a device to switch from a calm moment to a massive riffy moment, and I feel that the production kind of feels a bit flat all the way through, and the dynamics aren't quite there to really make it as effective as it could be. Michael Ackerfeld's vocals still sound amazing on this record. You know, he's never put a bad vocal performance in his entire career, whether it be from Orchid to the stuff he did on Storm Corrosion. I don't think he did vocals on Storm. I don't know, I haven't listened to that album in ages, but I don't think he's put out a bad vocal performance in the history of his career, and this album is no different. The riffs, when they're good, are very good. The riffs, when they're slightly weaker, don't feel they suit the album as well as they could have done. I mean, the production on here, they're almost a press release. They said the production is very much like Heaven and Hell or classic heavy metal records. But I feel that they should have just let Steven Wilson do what he does best. You know, he's a progressive rock producer. He's done some of the best remasters or anything like that ever. And I think if they just said, produce it how you think it would be produced best, the production on this album would be very, very different, and I think it would be far superior to the way it is here. Again, the musicianship, it's Opeth. They're not going to be bad musicians. They're incredibly tight. You know, they really kind of play off each other in these songs, which I think is a nice touch. You know, hearing a riff from one of the guitarists move into a riff from another. But Opeth have always done that for me, so it's not really a surprise to see them doing that, personally. Again, the moments where they went into more weird or odd or experimental territory, I think are by far the strongest moments on the record, whether that be Moon Above, Sun Below, or again Eternal Rains Will Come, which are my favourite songs on the album. I feel when they go for that kind of territory, that's when their music works best. And all my favourite albums by them, whether it be Ghost Reveries or Morning Rise or Blackwater Park, I feel experiment enough to keep the album engaging overall. And I think when Opeth do that, it's perfect. When they don't, they're on shaky ground a bit. I mean, for some people, they may be thinking, you know, this is what Opeth do now, let's just accept it, you know, maybe it'll grow on us in the future, maybe it'll click with the fan base. And I've listened to it quite a few times, and right now I'm currently giving it a 7.5 out of 10. I think the strong moments on here are incredibly strong, the weak moments aren't too good, but overall, you know, if it's a weak Opeth album, you know, it could be my least favourite Opeth album yet, but it's Opeth. That's not really saying much. They are one of my favourite bands of all time. This is the band that put out Blackwater Park and Still Life and Ghost Reveries and Morning Rise and Damnation and Heritage. You know, they've always put out great material, and this is no different. I just feel when compared to their other stuff, and you know, you shouldn't really compare the albums to a band's discography, but personally I feel this is a bit of a dip in the Opeth discography so far, but you know, maybe they'll, you know, lift it back up again and release a classic album next time. So right now I'm going to give this a 7.5 out of 10. Tell me what you thought of the album. I know some of you may be thinking, you know, it's the best album Opeth have ever done, or some people will be, you know, completely bashing the record. It's a pretty controversial move for the band, you know, ever since Heritage or when they lost the clean vocals. Opeth have never been ones to shy away from a change in sound. I mean, I think it was not too long ago when Michael Acker felt something like, metalheads just want their Happy Meals, you know, they want it to be simple and the way they like it, and Opeth are going against that, and I think that's very cool of them to do that, and when it works, as I said, it really works. When it doesn't work so much, there should be some changes made. But again, that's just my opinion. Link in the description below to Hamish Observes Review, who does a brilliant review on this record. We agree on quite a lot, so I'd recommend you checking it out anyway. If there's any other review, there'll be tons of reviews going up quite soon. If there are any other reviews that I think deserve the shout out, or I think should be watched by some of you, or that you'll enjoy, I'll put those in the description as well. I believe Daniel Flux, who is another one of my favourite YouTubers, will be doing a review very soon, so there'll be a link in the description below to that when that's up. He's been waiting to hear the album on vinyl, so that's that. But again, possibly my least favourite Opeth album, but that's not saying much when they have such a brilliant discography. They're still a stunning band. They're still one of my favourite bands of all time. This album hasn't knocked them. It's still a, you know, it's a 7.5. That's still a good score. It's just not as good as I kind of prayed it would be. But whatever. That's just my opinion. Maybe I'll release a brilliant album next time. Who knows? Thank you for watching. Link in the description below to my Facebook page and my Instagram if you choose to follow me or like me on my Facebook. So yeah, thank you for watching. See you guys in another video.